What was the easiest time to get away with crime? The Dark Ages. It's 1000 AD and you're a knight. You trade the battlefield for a life of crime. Sounds like a terrible career move, until you discover the medieval world is packed with legal loopholes that make staying one step ahead of the king surprisingly easy. You start by playing real life Robin Hood. Skip the whole giving to the poor part. Every job puts a little more gold in your pocket and a higher price on your head. You rob bakeries, resell the bread, then use the profits to start coin clipping, shaving tiny slivers off of every coin you receive, melting the metal down and forging even more coins, turning stolen bread into a money printer. Eventually, your mysterious source of income becomes impossible to ignore, and the king's soldiers catch you red-handed. You promise you'll quit, but it isn't called the Dark Ages for nothing. There are no streetlights, no security cameras, and barely any roads, so that night you disappear into the woods, never to be seen again. You repeat this scheme in neighboring towns until your reputation grows so large the kingdom finally sends a squad of knights to hunt you down. Luckily, you've got one last ace up your sleeve. You sprint into the nearest church. Seems like a pretty strange hiding spot, right? Well, the medieval church operated under its own legal system, completely separate from local kings and lords. Under the law of sanctuary, anyone who successfully reached a church couldn't be arrested by secular authorities. Now, you weren't completely off the hook. The priest feeds and shelters you for 40 days, but those days fly by and your hunters are basically spawn camping the church entrance. So on the final day, you confess your sins, swear an oath to leave England forever, and walk to a designated port to board a ship, while everyone watches completely dumbfounded. And just like that, you've escaped execution entirely. Unfortunately, you don't exactly learn your lesson. You eventually return, keep stealing, and this time you are finally arrested. Luckily, being a wealthy knight comes with one last absurd legal loophole. You challenge your accuser to trial by combat. The winner is declared innocent because everyone believes God would never let the guilty guy win. You proceed to absolutely no-diff the poor bloke trying to prosecute you and ride off into the sunset. Abusing every exploit in the medieval crime playbook was pretty broken, but it was still a little bit risky. Now imagine committing crimes while millions of ordinary people and parts of the police actually wanted you to do it. Prohibition Era. It's 1920, and you're the leader of a pathetic street gang scraping together enough money to survive, until the US government does something so unbelievably stupid it practically hands you an infinite money glitch. Overnight, millions of ordinary Americans become your customers. Turns out, banning everyone's favorite pastime was surprisingly good for business. Now, sitting in a damp basement making moonshine wasn't exactly the millionaire lifestyle, so you buy a cargo boat with your first week's profits and start smuggling booze from Canada. Unfortunately, your ship is about as fast as the guy sitting in the passing lane when you're trying to get to work, so the Coast Guard seizes it almost immediately. Lesson learned. Next time, your gang anchors just outside the US territorial waters at an area known as Rum Row, where you transfer the liquor onto sleek speedboats that leave the Coast Guard eating your wake. Soon, your crew wants to keep selling bottles out of the basement, but you know that's leaving a lot of money on the table, so you convert the entire house into a bar. One afternoon, you spot the police sniffing around for any signs of fun. How are you going to avoid suspicion? Well, it was simple. Board up the windows, make the place look abandoned, and rely entirely on word of mouth. That night, hundreds of thirsty customers pour through the grand entrance, which was the cellar door in the back alley. A place this successful needs a name, so you call it the Speakeasy. Within a month, you've cleared your first $1,000,000, but how are you going to get away with this so easily? Well, the Prohibition Bureau had fewer than 3,000 agents policing the entire United States. But eventually, a cop does knock on your front door and asks what the hell is going on. You hand him a month's salary, and he's already so fed up with his own involuntary sobriety that he pockets the cash and magically forgets why he came. The crew warns you that you're playing with fire. Sooner or later, you'll meet an honest cop. So you quietly close the speakeasy and funnel your profits into loan sharking and illegal gambling, which somehow are even more lucrative. Before long, your gang stops acting like street thugs and starts operating like a Fortune 500 company. You divide territories, manage supply chains, fix liquor prices, and rake in 8 figures. You feel completely untouchable. Until you hear the feds are secretly building a case against your empire? No problem, you simply buy immunity. As it turns out, plenty of police officers, federal agents, and politicians hated prohibition just as much as everyone else. They were more than happy to look the other way, for the right price that is. Soon, your own neighborhoods are practically being protected by the very people trying to arrest you. When prosecutors finally move to indict you, you offer the prosecutors, the judge, and even the mayor a few $1,000,000 on top of their salaries. Just like that, case closed. So what actually made the Prohibition era one of the easiest times in history to profit from crime? You see, many states and major cities simply refused to spend tax dollars enforcing a federal law that they didn't agree with. Juries regularly refused to convict bootleggers because they were regular customers themselves. Overnight, millions of ordinary people stopped seeing bootleggers as criminals and started seeing them as businessmen. It was the perfect storm: enormous demand, almost zero social stigma, weak enforcement, and unbelievably high rewards. Getting half the country to cheer you on while you broke the law was insane, but what if the government actually gave you permission to steal and a license to kill? The Golden Age of Piracy. It's 1650, you're flying the Skull and Bones, making a living robbing merchant ships when a special someone recognizes your talents. European powers like England and France couldn't afford massive navies in the Caribbean, so instead they hand you a letter of marque, a fancy piece of paper that basically says, "Congrats kid, your piracy is now legal, as long as you steal from Spain." Talk about killing two birds with one stone. So you raid a few Spanish ships, but there's one small problem. You can't exactly stroll into town carrying stolen treasure without raising at least a few eyebrows. So you head to the island of Tortuga, where buccaneers like yourself openly sell Spanish loot. Instead of arresting you, the locals happily buy it because all that plunder is pumping money into their economy. In this era, crime really did pay. Soon, raiding merchant ships starts feeling a little too easy, so you aim higher. You lead a massive assault on Panama City, one of Spain's richest strongholds. Instead of being hanged for piracy, you're knighted by the King of England and promoted to Lieutenant Governor of Jamaica. This actually happened, so that's one heck of a performance review. Eventually, colonial authorities begin cracking down on Tortuga, so you relocate to Madagascar, the ultimate lawless hideout. Sitting directly on major shipping routes, but far beyond European jurisdiction, it becomes the perfect place to disappear after every raid. No police, no courts, no one to answer to. Let's say you pull off one last massive robbery. Authorities eventually investigate, but days, weeks, or even months pass before the news even reaches them. And by then, you've already vanished across the 7 seas. Even if they do find your blood at the scene, DNA evidence wouldn't be used in court until 1987. There were no passports, no photo IDs, no social security numbers, and certainly no facial recognition cameras. If people started recognizing you from those badly drawn wanted posters, you simply grew a beard, changed your name to Mr. Bro or something, and started over somewhere else. Now, being legally paid to commit crimes sounds impossible to top, but the easiest era hadn't even been invented yet. Imagine making 100 times more without ever leaving the couch. And before the world even knew that the crimes you'd be committing were even possible. The early internet period. It's the early 2000s and you're a computer science student drowning in student debt. While your bank account is empty, you do possess one valuable skill: hacking. You start small. With Napster and early torrent sites exploding in popularity, digital piracy is everywhere. You spend your days downloading music, movies, and software completely free. Nobody seems to care, and copyright laws are so far behind that getting caught feels about as likely as getting struck by lightning. Free stuff is cool, but that tuition isn't gonna pay itself. So you and a buddy come up with something completely diabolical. Rob a bank. The best part? No masks, no getaway car, no awkwardly screaming, "Everybody get on the ground." You'd be doing the whole thing from the comfort of your bedroom. The digital heist is almost laughably easy. Most companies are still figuring out this whole internet thing, and basic firewalls are practically non-existent. Within hours, you've stolen hundreds of thousands. Unfortunately, you're still a rookie and accidentally leak your IP. Oops. Detectives show up, but prosecuting cybercrime is still largely uncharted territory. The investigators know you've done something illegal, they're just struggling to prove exactly how you did it or which laws apply. It's pretty tough to keep up when devious nerds are inventing new crimes faster than lawmakers can write them. You realize you're skating on thin ice, so it's back to the drawing board. This time you create a computer worm, and not the slimy kind, more like an early malware that quietly spreads across millions of computers while you sleep. By morning, unsuspecting users are logging into their online banking accounts, except they're really handing over their PIN numbers and security codes directly to you on the other end. And just like that, you get rich overnight, literally. And this time, nobody even knows they've been robbed until it's too late. In the end, whether it was hiding in churches, bribing police, sailing under a royal flag, or sitting behind a keyboard, every era had its own loopholes, but none made getting away with crime easier than a world that hadn't yet figured out how to stop it. Thank you for watching. If you did enjoy, drop a thumbs up and hit that subscribe as I post every single week. Until next time, see ya.